Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to explore the history of Japan, but through a really unique lens, its most popular science books. It's an amazing journey that's going to take us from secret anatomy scrolls for samurai all the way to modern pop culture blockbusters. So, let's just dive right in. What can a country's best-selling books really tell us about its history? Well, it turns out a lot. Because when you look at what a nation is reading about science, you're not just seeing, science. You're actually seeing its hopes, its fears, and its whole relationship with the rest of the world. It's a pretty fascinating mirror of a society on the move.
So, we're going to cover about 250 years here, and we'll do it in 5 quick steps. We're going to start way back in a time when Japan was almost completely shut off from the outside world.
Okay, so our story kicks off in the Edo period. Now, you gotta picture this. It's an era of shoguns, samurai, and deep, deep isolation. Back then, science wasn't something for the public, no way. It was a secret, like a rare and powerful key to a whole other world.
This knowledge was called Rengaku, which basically means Dutch studies, and it was pretty much the only window Japan had to Western thinking. And when I say exclusive, I mean really exclusive. We're talking about a tiny group of elite doctors and scholars who were just painstakingly trying to figure out this completely different way of seeing the world.
And this book right here, The Keitai Shinsho, is the perfect example of this era. It came out in 1774, and it was the first full Japanese translation of a Western anatomy book. It totally turned traditional medicine on its head. But here's what's so fascinating. Its impact was huge, but its circulation was tiny. It wasn't a bestseller as we think of it. Only a few hundred copies were ever actually printed. Instead, its influence just exploded through manuscripts that were copied by hand and passed from scholar to scholar. Some people at the time even claimed it became as common as a guidebook to the local entertainment districts. Now that's a wild exaggeration, of course, but it tells you just how much buzz this secret knowledge was creating among the elite.
And then, boom, 1868 hits and everything changes. The Meiji Restoration throws Japan's doors wide open, and the whole nation just starts this frantic race to modernize and catch up with the West. And that sparks the next big chapter in our story.
And just like that, the whole point of science does a complete 180. It's not a private hobby for scholars anymore. It's now a public tool, an absolutely essential ingredient for building a strong, modern country. And who's the target audience? The next generation. This huge shift kicked off what was called Kyurinetsu, a science fever. All of a sudden, there was this massive nationwide hunger to understand how the natural world worked, especially physics. It was seen as the absolute key to progress. And this book was the match that lit the fuse. It was written by the great modernizer Fukuzawa Yukichi, and Kunmokuri Zukai was basically a simple illustrated physics book for kids, and it was a total sensation. It became a core text in the new school system and pretty much set the standard for science education for decades to come. So now you can see our story really starting to take shape on the timeline. In less than 100 years, we've gone from complicated anatomy for a few elite doctors to basic physics for every single school kid in the country. The audience for science was just growing like crazy. Okay, let's jump forward. After the devastation of World War II, Japan goes into this period of intense rebuilding and incredible technological optimism. And this created the perfect storm for a brand new kind of science publishing to just explode onto the scene. And that's when the Bluebacks arrived. This series, which launched in 1963, was an absolute game changer. They were cheap, pocket-sized paperbacks that took really complex subjects, I'm talking relativity, robotics, you name it, and made them understandable for absolutely everyone. Their motto said it all, science to your pocket. And the scale of their success is, it's just mind-boggling. Since it launched, the Blueback series has sold over 70 million copies. This wasn't just a fever anymore, this was science becoming a core part of everyday popular culture. And with that, our historical timeline is pretty much complete. We've seen this 200-year journey from exclusive knowledge for the few to a nation-building tool for the young, and finally, to accessible information for everybody. This really marks the moment science was fully democratized in Japan. So where do we go from there? Well, in the modern era, the job of science books changes yet again. They move beyond just giving you information, and they become these huge cultural events, basically a form of mass entertainment. And here's the real turning point. The most successful science books stopped being only about science. They started blending with other genres,
philosophy, social commentary, comedy, even adventure stories to create something totally new and exciting for a massive audience.
The sales figures are just incredible. A book like Baka no Kabe, which is basically a philosophical essay by an anatomist, sold over 4.4 million copies. It wasn't just a book, it became a national conversation. And more recently, you're seeing a new trend with these personal stories, like the memoir of an entomologist hunting locusts in Africa, selling over 250,000 copies.
I mean, the sheer variety here is what's so amazing. You've got these serious intellectual essays, then you have a super popular series that uses actual physics to figure out the power of anime attacks, and then you have these deeply personal stories of scientists out in the field. Science isn't one genre anymore. It's become a lens you can use to look at pretty much anything.
Okay, so after this whole 250-year journey, what's the big picture? What's the story that these books are really telling us about Japan?
Well, this table really sums it up perfectly. You can see a crystal clear evolution from exclusive knowledge to a tool for nation building, to mass market access for everyone, and finally, to a source of personal identity and pure entertainment. Each era's bestsellers tell you exactly what the nation needed from science in that specific moment.
It really is this incredible journey, from forbidden anatomy scrolls meant for just a handful of samurai doctors, all the way to a funny, relatable memoir about chasing locusts in Africa that's read by hundreds of thousands of people. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, right? If a country's best-selling science books really are a mirror to its soul, what are the books on our shelves today, the ones about AI, about climate change, about the human brain? What do they say about the challenges and the questions that are going to define our future?